And now for your hosts, Michael Gross and Sean Bush.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another awesome episode of WrestleMagic. Tonight we're going to have some fun. We've got Sean Bush back on the show. Sean is an amazing guy. We became friends a long time ago, and we really love talking wrestling. We have a lot of fun with it, and we talk about all kinds of different topics. WrestleMagic has gone through a lot of cocoon stages, growing into butterflies. I got to give a shout out to my nephew because there was a point where I could not record. A lot of our contributors could not record, and he picked up the ball and he ran with it. And for a while, WrestleMagic was WrestleMaverick. And he did a lot for us. And I just want to say thank you because without you, we wouldn't have the show anymore. So thank you very much. And thank you for everything that you've done. And thank you for booking the amazing talent that you found. And let's just keep going forward. Let's keep having fun. Now, going forward today, Sean Bush, how are you doing?
Oh, not too bad. How about yourself?
Not bad. Another day in Louisville. Like, how many more storms are we going to get here today?
Not enough. Let's cool us off a bit.
Oh, dude. I swear, it has been very, very stormy, folks. And, we're just going to have some fun tonight. And we're going to talk about one of the most amazing but still incredibly underrated tag teams. However, they're not really a tag team. And that is the Fabulous Freebirds. Now, I know they might be from before your time, and you might not have understood how important the impact that they had on the wrestling product is, but the Freebirds did so much more for wrestling and their influence and their rules than people could understand. So, Sean, first, you want to introduce yourself a little bit and talk a little bit more? I mean, I know we've had you on other shows, but anything you want to come out and say?
Well, in reading up a little bit about the Fabulous Freebirds for this, because they were a little bit before my time, but I caught a bunch in, hindsight, retrospect, going back and checking things out. But I was surprised to see a couple of guys that were apparently in it. Brad Armstrong.
Brad Armstrong, yes.
Bad Street, right?
Yep, he was Bad Street.
Yeah,
that's correct.
I learned that. I did not know that. Talk about underrated, like a lot of those Armstrong guys, but I think everybody in this conversation probably is aware of that already.
Well, some people don't really understand how great the Armstrongs were because the only one they know is Road Dogg. And while Road Dogg was amazing and he had charisma, the best worker of the whole...
Scott.
Yeah.
He was a referee, I believe, for years and years.
Scott and Steve both. Yeah. I feel that the Armstrongs have never really gotten their due except for the father, Bullet Bob, who is what I named my car after because I have a little silver bullet of a car, and it's Bullet Bob.
WrestleMagic.
So what I want to go with and kind of like speak out on right now and talk about is the fact that, first of all, there's something called the Freebird rule.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Sean, would you like to talk about the Freebird rule?
It's pretty simple. You got multiple guys that can kind of rotate in a tag team. My boys, Demolition, had that going for a little bit when they had Axe, Smash, and Crush. I guess Bill Eadie was starting to kind of get out of the game a little bit at that point. The old Heavenly Bodies with Stan Lane, Bobby Eaton, and Tom Pritchard. And more recently, I guess, in WWE, they've had the Big E and Kofi and Xavier Woods. New Day. Who, again, underrated, I think, at least as far as like a lot of the modern product goes. They were really over for longer than a lot of modern guys tend to stay, especially in the mid-card in WWE.
Okay, so another team or another group that actually used the Freebird rule was back in the 90s in WCW, the Natural Born Thrillers. And
Indeed.
So, yeah, they actually won the tag titles, but other people would defend them. So you never know or knew who you were going to get. But let's go over the list of who all was in the Freebirds. So I'll start first. There was Michael P.S. Hayes, and if you don't know what P.S. stands for, it was purely sexy.
Michael Hayes, Buddy Roberts, Jack Roberts, I think they called him, at least for a while.
Buddy Jack Roberts, yeah. Yeah, he was the best worker, I thought.
I think he did most of the big stuff, the high spots and whatnot for the time.
So I'm going to go with Terry Bam Bam Gordy.
He was my favorite, personally.
Oh, he's amazing. He was amazing.
He died so young, too. I think he was only about 40, 41 years
Well,
old.
well, which time? We'll get to that in a little bit, but yeah, Terry Gordy died twice.
Hmm.
So it means up for speculation. Some people say he was just in an elongated coma, but
And speaking of Bam Bam, no, I'm not going to Bigelow today at least, but his son, Ray Gordy, I don't know if you remember him and some of the mid card or under mid card WWE stuff he was doing with, oh God, what was his name at the time?
Drew, Drew,
Festus.
yeah, Drew Gallows. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, you put a lot of grading on a curve at some of these eras in WWE, especially me. I wasn't really watching as much at the time, but have gone back again, like a lot of stuff. And those things at least were entertaining enough for the time in WWE, I think. But he doesn't get too much love. Ray Gordy, and I
Yeah,
believe
you're
his
absolutely
daughter
right.
actually tried to start a wrestling career. Terry Gordy's daughter.
No way. That's interesting.
I believe so. I'd have to look it up, but I think that he did have a daughter that was trying to get in a few years back, but I didn't really hear much after that.
So the next Freebird I will mention, I will take the most obscure one out, but we're going to talk about him in a minute, is Iceman King Parsons.
Oh yeah, I think actually that's another one I was kind of surprised. Really, he was in the Freebirds?
Well, he changed the Freebirds because they had all turned, Michael Hayes had turned, but it was a ploy.
Mm-hmm.
And so Iceman King Parsons was an African American, and he renamed them the Blackbirds. Yeah, that's something a lot of people don't really pay attention to or didn't know about, because a lot of that is kind of like swept under the rug as far as how it could be represented today. And it was just one of those things. He was known as Iceman King Parsons the Blackbird, and they were the Blackbirds.
What federation was that in? What promotion?
I believe World Class and Global.
Global.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a lot more knowledge, I think, on especially that older stuff around the World Class than I will. I know they had massive programs with the Von Erichs.
Oh, yes.
I mean, anybody that worked with the Von Erichs was, to my understanding, drawing money.
Now, can you name the last Freebird?
The last Freebird, we didn't mention Brad, I guess. Bad Streak.
You did that, yeah.
Well, Jimmy Jam. There we go.
Exactly. 100%, my friend, 100%. And what people didn't understand about the Freebirds is it started out originally as Michael P.S. Hayes, Terry Gordy, and Buddy Jack Roberts, and they all had a role. Now, if people don't know, Michael P.S. Hayes could cut a promo like no one's business. He was a great promo man. And then you have Buddy Jack, who was the worker. This guy could bump. He would come in. He was like your hot tag kind of guy. And then you have Terry Bam Bam.
A bit older, I believe.
Yeah.
He was older than the other guys. More experience.
Unfortunately, I think he was the first one to pass. And then you had Terry. Well, I mean, Terry did do it twice, but then you had Terry Bam Bam Gordy, who was a brawler, but he brought so much fire and so much excitement and so much when he got in the ring. And he would shake his legs up and down and rock his fists up and down. You knew that you were going to have a brawl right there. So whoever your territory brawler was, now you've got another brawler right there against you. And
I'm going to assume that his nickname as well. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm just going to assume because it's fun that it came from Bam Bam, like the Flintstones. He looks like a huge baby just up there. This just country strong, I guess, just like the Big Show New Year's baby, up there. But he was just so fun to look at. I think Terry Gordy had such a unique kind of look, even for the time.
You ever notice you never saw a whisker on his face?
Nah, not a beard guy.
Yeah, but I never even saw stubble on his face. So I'm
He
wondering
every day.
I mean,
I never saw stubble on King Kong Bundy's body anywhere. I don't think his head, anything.
I actually have pictures of King Kong Bundy with hair.
Okay, you'll have to send me those later.
Well, you guys are going to love this, but basically, when we were kids, I had a mother who was rather overweight, and she would always ask, like, "Am I fat? Am I fat?" And we would always say no. And then my little brother one day said, honestly, my sister and I looked at him like, don't say anything, Tim. And he said, you look like the bride of King Kong Bundy.
Hey, that may or may not be a compliment. I couldn't tell you what the bride of King Kong Bundy looked like.
Bundy with hair. But anyway, like getting back to it. So the Freebirds formed, and they were rivals, very famous rivals, with the Von Erichs, and they were tearing up Dallas. And when I was young, I really thought that the Freebirds were from Dallas. But it turns out they had done their own theme song, and they were from Atlanta, Georgia. Now,
That's
Sean,
Atlanta, GA.
exactly. And I loved that theme song, Bad Street USA. Yeah, I'm not going to do it justice, folks. I'm Michael.
We do wrestling themed karaoke after the show. That'll be on a Patreon at some point.
Yeah, I'm Michael P.S. Gross, not Michael P.S. Hayes. But when it comes down to what they did in the ring, the way they had their own rules, and how they set a precedent in wrestling, I think it's very underrated. And so there's a lot of teams that get their flowers, but we should give a little bit of flowers to definitely the Fabulous Freebirds, because they would set every city on fire. And is there any Freebird match that you would like to bring up or talk about?
My favorite wasn't even the match so much. I loved the Cornette story. I don't know if you've heard it. It was them against the Midnights, I believe, with Dr. Death, Steve Williams on their team. And I guess Corny says they were kind of getting big on themselves, and at that point, and weren't bumping for them. The Freebirds were not bumping for the Midnight, whatnot, and it ended up basically in almost a brawl where Dr. Death took a real wooden chair from the stadium and was bashing it over the head of Jimmy Garvin, like screaming,
Lord.
F with me, F with me. It's a great story. I mean, obviously, Corny tells it. It's a great story, but they had a bit of a program that I watched some of, and our WCW's YouTube channel, which has actually been going pretty well. Obviously, I guess WWE runs it, but they've been doing a lot of. I love it. And they were just had was not the Great American Bash, but maybe Clash of Champions, like '89, I believe, on a military base. But they had the opening match. They had two matches. Bam Bam was in a match later on, but the opening was Michael Hayes and Jimmy Garvin against Johnny Ace and your boy Shane Douglas.
Shane Douglas, yeah. The dudes with attitudes.
The dudes with attitude, yes. It blows my mind going back, having mostly known Johnny Ace from his time, John Laurinaitis, and seeing him in his little days with Shane Douglas especially. I mean, that was the first. This isn't the first time I've seen him, but several years ago when I had gone back and saw that for the first time, it really blew my mind, just seeing the both of them together. Like, who are these guys coming on little skateboards with the blonde mullets? Good Lord.
Half the time they couldn't skate, so they would just carry the skateboards. I think that's the funniest part. Like, all right, guys, let's phone in the funk here. Come on.
I believe Johnny Ace can skateboard. I don't know about Shane Douglas.
I don't know about either, to be honest with you. But I will tell you that definitely, after looking back at the Freebirds' career, so when Jim Crockett Promotions wanted to hardcore sign the Road Warriors, they had to be run out of the territory. And so it was all three Freebirds, the originals. So Terry and Buddy Jack and Michael P.S. Hayes against the Road Warriors. Now, Road Warriors, of course, come out to Iron Man. The Freebirds came out with the stars and bars painted on their face to Freebird. Now, something I've heard, but I don't know if it's true or not, is Michael Hayes claims that they were the first team to come out to theme music. Now, I don't know. I've tried looking this up quite a bit.
I've seen that. There's a lot of, if I remember correctly, there was a few things they talked about when it comes to the entrance music that around the same time, like different teams have already been using music as well. So it's kind of disputed, but hey, it's wrestling, if you can't get in a good, why let the truth get in the way of a good story? He's going to say, of course we're the first team to use entrance music. Come on.
Now, some things that people do not know. The Freebirds actually wrestled in the WWF before it was WWE, but it was only for a few months.
The
And
Rock and Wrestling Connection.
they came in, they were starting things, but apparently they were partying out of control.
With Andre,
And
right? I think that was one of the.
yeah, yes.
They had a thing with Andre, like out partying somewhere.
Oh gosh. Thing is, Andre could get away with anything he wanted because he was Andre. He was an attraction where the Freebirds, they thought they were bringing in something that was going to ignite everything on fire, and but the guys, the story is so. Do not get me into slander and libel
Grain
and
of
everything
salt.
else. Yeah,
Grain of salt.
grain
Allegedly.
of salt.
Say allegedly.
Allegedly, they were just getting
We're covered.
they were getting Schlitz faced all the time. And so Vince had enough with it. And this was right around the time Hogan was breaking big, or right before. So he told the boys take a walk. And so they went back to Dallas. And then that's when they really started lighting the world on fire with the Von Erichs. So
That would have been about 85, something like that. 84, 85.
84, I think it's 83, 84. But
Okay.
it was a very early program in their lives that they went to WWF, and then they realized, okay, we're not built for New York yet. And then, of course, Vince didn't like people with Southern accents. So he wanted the Freebirds to put a lot of people over. And the Freebirds weren't really happy about that. So they were just like, let's just party tonight, and we'll see if we can work with the Bulldogs tomorrow. But they were in no shape. In fact, they say the only person from the stories I've heard that could show up and be ready to go was Terry Gordy. And I think about what some of those programs could have been, because those could have been like beautiful, beautiful programs. And, to think about the Bulldogs versus the Freebirds, it might exist somewhere. It might have happened in Canada. It might have happened somewhere else in the territory, but I've never seen footage like that. And so, they went back to Dallas, and then that's when they really just ignited the whole scene with the Von Erichs. And it was so strange to watch some of their matches with Mike instead of David, just because David had passed around this time and Mike was really green. But they knew how to put the right players. So, you take Buddy Jack, you put him in the ring. And so Mike's young and he's green, but Buddy Jack could carry him. And then Kerry comes in, the big Adonis, and so who's going to take him down? Terry Bam Bam Gordy, and then Michael Hayes would be dancing on the apron like he always did.
It can't be understated, really, when you look at just the contrast there. Similar in the sense that, both teams had that Southern thing going on, but so different. They were the bad guys looking, compared to the Von Erichs, who were seen as, despite everything going on in the background, we're seen by the crowds and the fans as this, upstanding, the ultimate sort of babyface brother team. It was lightning in a bottle kind of situation. How many times does that sort of thing, manifest in wrestling?
It's very few and far between, to be honest with you. And I think you have a really good point with that, because the Usos, okay, you have a little bit of a lightning in a bottle, but not fully. But the Von Erichs, until David died, you had three equal competitors. And David was the best, we all know that. And I'm not trying to do that just for the movie Iron Claw or anything like that. He really was the best in-ring competitor.
Have we, I know we want to get going, but have we talked about that on here, the Iron Claw?
We did a show before you came on about the Iron Claw, but if you want to talk about it real quick, I thought it was weird that
you mentioned it, and it didn't bring up the Freebirds, did they?
No. If they did, it was background characters, and it was
very much in passing, I believe. I have to go back and watch it again. I've only seen it once since it came out, but I think it's a very quick passing sort of moment.
Which was like probably the thing that kept Dallas going, the Dallas territory going for so long, because there was so much talent there. There was so much talent between that feud, and that feud sold out stadium after stadium. I would come home from fourth grade.
Probably Texas Stadium multiple times, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah, easily. But I think there was a lot of respect on either side. And I think that's what really, it wasn't about one-upsmanship. I think it was about showmanship. Does that make sense?
Indeed. And more than secondhand, knowledge on world class sort of indicates that it was the kind of place that nobody was really making money there, really, except for if you were working with the Von Erichs and the Von Erichs themselves. And I mean, as far as I know, they were one of the longest, if not the longest, running feud that they had in world class with the Von Erichs and the Freebirds, and it drew every time.
Well, you couldn't have the Von Erichs without the Freebirds. It was a perfect 3-on-3. It was basically, unfortunately, after David's death and Mike came in, and Mike, he was still, green. It wasn't as good anymore. It wasn't, and I hate to say that because I'm not speaking ill of the dead. It was a different program to put somebody in who wasn't ready for the role. But watching them was awesome. Now, also in this Dallas territory, Jimmy Jam Garvin, that was the first time he started tagging up with them. And he started becoming a Freebird. And then they had the exile of Michael Purely Sexy Hayes. So he's getting kicked out, but he's being replaced by the Blackbird Iceman King Parsons. Now, if you folks don't know who Iceman King Parsons was, great wrestler. Great wrestler. He could sell and bump like no one's business. And he had talent. He had charisma. He was perfect for that role. And I think it was to gather more heat because they really wanted to build it up for when they turned on Iceman.
Gordy was going to cut Michael Hayes' hair, right?
Yeah.
It was a hair versus hair match. Gordy and Hayes, and Gordy beat him and was about to cut his hair, but turned on Parsons.
Oh, he used to have a famous saying. Iceman King Parsons had a famous saying, and I can't remember right now, and it's going to kick me in the brain, but it was just like, you can't trust or something. Like, it was like a brother knows, or I don't know. It was a really cool saying.
Like Mama says, it bees that way sometimes.
There you go, Jimmy. There you go. Like Mama says, it bees that way sometimes. Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you for chiming in.
Very welcome.
That was an infamous saying, or famous saying. I put it as a famous, not infamous saying, when you talk about like a one-liner that comes out of a wrestler's mouth. And so Parsons, when he was part of it and he replaced Michael Hayes, Parsons, like, he could work. He could really, really work. I mean, he wasn't Bobby Eaton or Stan Lane, okay, but he could really, really work and he could sell. And so I loved, like, we're the Blackbirds now. Now, I don't know if this is true, okay? So it's alleged, but I've read a couple, allegedly, that from different websites I've read that he got the idea for the name from the crows in the movie The Wiz.
Oh, really?
I've seen two different websites that have said that. But if it's not true, I don't want to say the names of those websites. But looking back at the way they acted when they were the Blackbirds, I'm like, I can see it. Okay. But I just think that he was taking them in a different direction, and I loved it. I really, really loved it. So I'm a little kid. I've got my little wrestling encyclopedia. Okay. And so I only get to see the Freebirds maybe for 5 or 6 minutes when I come home at 4 o'clock before it hits 5 and wrestling's over on the AWA or WCCW channel. And my favorite thing to do was watch Jim Crockett Promotions 605 Live. And I loved 605 Live. And one day I'm watching it and they're playing, who did the song? Ooh yeah, cool kitty, just like the boy from New York City. The boys are back in town. And they were playing The Boys Are Back in Town. And then all of a sudden they started showing the Freebirds. And they're like, coming soon, the Freebirds. And I was just like, wow, we got a 2-hour show I can watch on Saturday at 6 o'clock versus a 1-hour show. And I get to see the Freebirds. And so the first big thing, they came out, they cut promos, but they weren't doing anything. And it was when Ron Garvin beat Ric Flair in a steel cage for the title in 86-87. Michael Hayes was in there and he was doing his little doot on his fingers and like giving him a fist bump. I don't think I ever saw a fist bump before that. But if you go back and look, Michael Hayes was doing that. I think Michael Hayes invented the fist bump. Probably not, but I'm sticking to it. And it was great. And then the Freebirds came in on the scene. And of course, Michael Hayes wants to challenge, Ric Flair, but people didn't have interest in that, which was kind of sad. I think it could have filled some seats, but looking back, it wouldn't have been a stellar match. And then Buddy Jack and Terry Gordy were doing their thing, and the tag team wrestling at that point was just so great. People ask me why I love tag team wrestling so much. It's because it was fun. And back then you had true tag teams. It wasn't who's going to be the breakout star. And we had so much fun watching them. So much fun.
You mentioned that, and I've got they had a episode of Collision AEW tonight. Watch that, and I've got that playing in the background. But they got a little program right now going, promos with FTR and that I don't know if we talked about the Outrunners. So these two guys that are two teams that are basically not ripping off, but they're homages to 80s tag team wrestling in the best ways possible. I don't know if you've watched the Outrunners that much, but they're very fun. But they're both hitting that 80s tag team like button as hard as they can, as many times as they can.
But that's when tag teams were tag teams, and that's when we really loved watching these tag teams, and that's why the Freebirds had such an impact on wrestling.
I mean, we had the discussion in the last podcast about the Fantasy Crockett Cup. I mean, to just boil it down to 16 teams, you could have easily picked a lot of other teams from that era that would have made it in and been just fine over some of these even newer teams. Like, as great as the run that the three teams in WWE had, the Hardys, the Dudleys, and Edge and Christian, it was great for a series of matches over a couple of years, but the volume and just sheer amount of quality of tag team wrestling in that era is really, I mean, it's not been close ever since. I mean, and tag team wrestling right now, in a lot of respect, is worse than it's probably ever been, I think, with some exceptions, of course. Those two teams I just mentioned in AEW I love watching them. Oh, and speaking of another group that would fit into the Freebird rule right now, also in AEW, is Christian Cage's Patriarchy.
Oh, yes.
They had a match tonight as well with Christian and Buddy Wayne's son, Nick Wayne, or he's now Christian's son. So poor dead Buddy Wayne no longer has a son because Christian Cage adopted him, I guess. But they swap in with, oh goodness, what's the other guy's name? It'll come back on in a few minutes.
Oh, the Kill Switch?
Well, he's not back yet. He's still been out for a while. Luchasaurus, don't give me this Kill Switch, his slave name over here, for crying out loud.
Oh, gosh.
But in either case, that's another example of this Freebird rule that, like you said earlier, it really, I think at the time it might have like ruffled some feathers, but like a lot of things, you end up looking back on it and it opens up a lot of possibilities for booking, covering up things like Hayes not really being that great of a worker, because to my estimation, he never was. Great talker, great promo. But when you've got him, you can, swap in and out sometimes with a Bam Bam, with a Jimmy Garvin, with a Buddy Roberts. It's a very powerful tool in a booker's, catalog to use.
So the interesting part is when they came to JCP, the old NWA before it was WCW, they were doing some great work. They were causing some little stirs here and there. And then I think Buddy Jack got sick at that point, and he kind of disappeared. And then Terry had a lot of offers because he's so big and he was so strong and he was a tough guy to work more in Japan.
Japan, yeah.
And so
you look at him, especially then. I mean, he's the epitome of a gaijin, coming over, from the States to Japan. I am planning on trying to find more of those matches if I can to watch here in the near future, because I bet they were fun as hell.
Well, another show I want to do with you, Sean, is about MVC, but I'm about to mention them.
All right.
So what ends up happening is Buddy Jack gets sick. I think prematurely. I don't know. I don't know for a fact. I wasn't there. But I can tell you that like all of a sudden he just kind of disappeared. So Jimmy Garvin is there, and so he rejoins. And so Jimmy Jam is back with Michael Hayes, but Terry Gordon he is making so much money on Japan tours and being like the perfect giant gaijin tough guy. He forms a new tag team with Steve Dr. Death Williams known as the Miracle Violence Connection.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect name. And a lot of people, a lot of historians, a lot of people who actually worked in the industry, they will tell you it was true. It was a miracle that it worked out, and they were violent, and they were a connection, and they were good friends until they both parted.
I wonder, just as an aside, it's a great name, by the way, like
Oh
you said.
gosh, yes.
It's got such an air of like Japanese wrestling too, like the miracle part of it. It doesn't seem like something I would be interested to know who came up with. I suspect maybe somebody there in I forget which promotion they were in, primarily in Japan, but whichever promotion that was.
Oh man, you know it had to be. I'm
Miracle
thinking
just is such a Japanese description for like a wrestling name or a movie or something like that.
It would be like Miracle or The Gift Japanese, like The Gift Violence, like what? Or
it's wonderful. I love it.
It's a great, and folks, if you have never watched the MVC, the Miracle Violent Connection, these guys were legit, and they would brawl. They had some great matches, them and the Steiners, them and the Road Warriors, and anybody they wrestled in Japan. It was just brutal and fun.
I think the only thing they would have been missing, especially in Japan, would have been like Stan Hansen being their manager or something.
I think he was still wrestling at that point.
Yeah, probably.
He's got to, lariat someone's eyeball out first. So this is what's going on with the timeline of the Freebirds. Okay. So Jimmy Jam is now reuniting with Michael P.S. Hayes, and Buddy Jack he's definitely, his health is taking an issue, and Terry Gordy's gone on to different pastures, but he was still wrestling in WCW. And I believe Terry Gordy and Dr. Death, they took the titles off somebody, and they were the WCW Tag Team Champions. They continued their All Japan thing. I want to say from like 91 to 93, I believe that the Freebirds were simply known as Michael Hayes and Jimmy Jam Garvin. The interest was losing. It was kind of waning. Without Buddy Jack and Terry Gordy, it wasn't the same, and a Freebird rule couldn't exist with only two people. So things were just kind of getting shaky and rocky. I mean, would you agree?
Sure. Yeah, you lose a little bit of that shine that you had for a long time. But and frankly, at that point, Jimmy Garvin, I would imagine, would be getting close to at least winding down. I know he was a bit older as well.
Absolutely.
And as Cornette talked about it, that's probably where I know most of my information about the Freebirds, just, based on osmosis from years and years of that. And I believe I remember him talking about a similar situation in that era. You got Michael Hayes, who was never a great worker, who's now a primary worker, and an aging Jimmy Garvin, who was a great worker in his younger days, but at that point probably was getting into his 40s. And as far as I know, he really kind of dropped off fairly quickly, allegedly. Don't come after me, Jimmy Jam, please.
Yeah.
Or Precious. Don't stick Precious.
No, no, not Precious, not Precious. It was a transitional period in wrestling, because at this point, like, a lot of the great tag teams of the 80s were starting to get a little long in the tooth. I mean, I get that the Samoan SWAT team was Rikishi and Tonka Kid, I believe.
That too.
Yeah. And
Rikishi.
And like the Midnights were putting them over every night. Like it was a different era when WCW bought out of the NWA. It was just a different night and day for tag team wrestling and things like that. So at this point, the Freebirds were kind of, I don't know, rolling up their sleeves and saying, all right, it's time to do the dishes and time to scrub the toilet and say, hey, at this point, maybe wrestling's not for us.
Love to see Michael Hayes scrubbing the toilet, by the way. That would be a hell of a visual.
That would be kind of funny.
Doc Hendricks here in the men's room.
Oh, so that's where I'm going next with this, is all of a sudden I started seeing old WCW stars show up on WWE/WWF. First thing I saw was an interviewer named Stan Lane, and I'm like, you're way too talented. still, and you're still young to be an interviewer. And I think I only saw him for like 2 months, and then Stan Lane disappeared. I think they're still looking for
Yeah, he
Stan
wasn't there
Lane.
long.
Yeah,
He's doing, as far as I know, like motorboat racing,
that
like one of Speed Network or something like that. He was doing commentary for like motorboat racing.
that's like when I saw former NBA center Brad Daugherty doing or a NASCAR analyst, and it's like, what? This doesn't make sense. Because
He's
Brad, I
just a big
just couldn't
fan.
imagine Brad Daugherty like I just didn't see it. Like, but people look at me. I mean, you know me. You've met me in personal life, and I always wear a dress shirt and things like that. Someone sees me in a t-shirt, and they're like, "You just don't look the same." I just, it's just whatever. But so getting down to it. Next thing I know, I'm watching WWF before it was WWE. I always have to say something like that. And I see Michael Hayes, and he's an announcer. Like he took Stan Lane's spot. And
Just the old rivalry popping up again, man. You can't kill
yeah,
it.
no joke, no joke, right? And so I was just like, wow, this is weird. And he's like, yeah, I'm Doc Hendricks, and I hated that. WWE used to do that back in the
Uh,
day.
ha-
Always rename people.
Handsome Doc Hendricks. Handsome Doc Hendricks.
That's right, that's right, because he was no longer purely sexy.
He
And
was just handsome. He got demoted from purely sexy to handsome.
but
If
I'm
only
like,
we could all be so lucky.
all these territories. I know that at this point Vince had put all the territories out of business, but it's just the fact that everybody knows who he is. Everybody saw him like 6 months ago. Just say he's Michael Hayes. That's all you have
It is
to
a
do.
problem. It's one of the things, and I do agree. I hate that about WWF. These days, especially, again, an old story about Vader coming in, and he wanted to. He's a big mastodon. They wanted to name him the Mastodon or something
Yeah.
like that. And Jim Cornette's got to tell him it's friggin' Vader. Everybody knows who Vader is. How
Yeah.
what must we do this? Like, it does kill me. I mean, I get why they do it, but it's a very cynical, corporate thing for the most part. Plus, these newer names. I don't know if you've seen those lists that have been going around for like the trademark
Oh,
names. They're
goofy.
horrible.
Well, remember Michael McGillicuddy.
I mean, that's a good one. I think at least. I mean,
Michael.
McGillicuddy. It's fun to say, McGillicuddy.
Oh, that was Chris
I
Saxon.
pulled it up real quick just because I wanted to see it. But like, yeah. Draco Knox, Jax
What?
Presley. Yeah, I'm not getting some of the Hayes Jameson. Kind of could work, like Haze. I think you can make that work with some tweaks, but most of the time it's just, oh yeah. I mean, I'm surprised I mean, at least maybe it's a Triple H thing, which he has his own issues, but that's for another discussion. But at least they kept Penta's name. When he came out with he's had a few different names over the years, but instead of changing his whole gimmick up, recognizing that that's kind of the point with a lot of these characters, and maybe that's to some extent going away for established stars, hopefully.
I hope so too. But anyway, so the plight of the Freebirds went into a situation where Michael Hayes was now working as a commentator and backstage for WWE. And his big thing
And
was,
as far as I know, has always had a good reputation as an agent, right? A producer, or what are they calling these days?
Yeah,
Agenting matches.
yeah, producer, agent, coach. I guess it's all the same thing. And he worked in, I guess, some level of talent, relations, things like that. Like anything that, kind of like just solve problems. Except he did kind of make X-Pac mad. And apparently the story is when they had what was called the plane ride from hell, he was passed out, and the story is X-Pac cut his mullet off.
Yeah,
And Michael Hayes without a mullet is just nothing.
I would still want to see that picture, though. I mean, I guess we
I
kind of
would
did
love
it a little bit, but
Just-
I'm honestly, that's the funniest part of that entire story, especially now looking back on it with the dark side of the ring and everything, and just as bad as a lot of the rest of it was, the Ric Flair stuff, whatnot, even Dustin Rhodes, who thankfully it seems has gotten his whole life back on track after really being in a dark place around that time, which I love to see.
Yeah.
But that part of it, you can actually kind of laugh at. Yes, X-Pac cutting Michael Hayes' mullet is definitely the best thing that happened on that fight.
Well, to me, the whole thing was like, that means like he was good at talent relations, but obviously some people had a problem, or they just partied way too much and they just did not care what they were doing. And we don't know. We'll never be there. We were never there. I remember hearing
I
about
mean, I
it and
think
like,
Sean Waltman. I think Waltman would admit that he was probably ballooned off something. He's been pretty
I,
open about his troubles back in there in that period of time.
I think you're right. I think he definitely did. But I mean, getting back to the Freebirds and what's important is, so there was a lot of unfortunate circumstances that happened. So I mean, Buddy Jack dies, and that, really killed the Freebirds. Now, in between, some stuff we didn't talk about is like when they were trying to build it back to a three-man team in WCW. Let me rewind a couple minutes. They brought in Brad Armstrong, who was one of the most talented workers in the world, and we've talked about this, but they always said that he had no personality.
No Riz.
Yeah, he had no riz, and so he wrestled as Bad Street. They didn't like it. They were like, no, we're just going back to a two-man team. It's just you and Jimmy Jam. And so unfortunately, out of the six people, I believe it was six people who were Freebirds, three are dead and three are alive.
Right before Gordy died, I believe it was him and I guess Michael Hayes had a match with a young Hardy Boys. Well, it would have been about 2000, I guess. So maybe not that young, but still fairly young. But they'd been established a little bit at that point.
Now, I'll tell you one of my favorite Michael Hayes moments is he comes out to interview the Hardy Boys. And he's like, yeah, this is Doc Hendricks here and everything. And then like either Matt or Jeff was like, dude, you're Michael P.S. Hayes. And he just stopped being Doc Hendricks at that day, which is the dumbest name.
And started wearing Junko jeans or whatever with the tight shirts, which was an amazing look for him. Michael Hayes, if you ever hear this, that was an amazing look for you at the time.
Yeah, dude.
It was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing.
Do you remember how well he wrestled, though, when he was with the Hardys, going against the Brood?
Oh, I'd have to go back and watch some of those matches, but he did. He's one of those guys that just late bloomer as far as the worker goes.
He was trying to keep up with them. I mean, he wasn't doing swanton off of a ladder or anything, but he was keeping up. He was fast, and I was like, you got to be kidding me. This is Michael Hayes? I'm used to you going doot, doot, doot and walking down the side of the ring and, being the person to like hype up into the camera before you got a tag. And I was just like, I was really blown away that he worked the way he worked in the 90s. And folks, just look up the Hardy Boys and Michael Hayes versus the Brood, and you're going to be blown away by all the work that they did. It was just such great work, and I didn't see it happening. I didn't know it was going to happen like that. I really thought it was going to be a bum of a match, or like someone would come in, like Christian would kick out Michael Hayes' leg and pin him real fast. No, they actually had real matches, and I was like, this cannot be the same people, well, the same person. So. Okay, Terry Bam Bam Gordy passed away twice. Or, depending on what you read or listen to, he passed away once and he was in a coma once. Terry, at one point, was one of the best brawlers that you would ever see. He was amazing. He had skills that no one could even understand. He was Terry Bam Bam Gordy. But they said after like an incident where he flew from Japan back to America that either he died on the flight or he had gone into a coma and he was never the same.
He had a blood clot, I believe, which caused a heart attack. I'm not sure about the blood clot.
Yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right. And if you never saw Bam Bam in his prime, he was so amazing. He was so amazing. So he had one last stint in WWF where they made him the Executioner and he was supposed to be Mankind's friend. And they had him under a mask and everything, but you could just tell when he was wrestling, it just wasn't the same. It just wasn't the same Bam Bam. And then he didn't live much after that. And, so
2001, something like that, I believe is when he passed away.
Yeah. So Brad Armstrong, Buddy Jack, and Terry, they all passed away.
Mm-hmm.
Brad was one heck of a performer, and they just stuck him with this gimmick that you're this masked man named Bad Street, and it was just terrible, And so the three that are alive obviously Michael Purely Sexy Hayes, Jimmy Jam Garvin,
Mm-hmm.
and
I
Iceman
was gonna
King
bring up
Parson.
King Parsons is still going. Yeah.
Yeah, he's still alive. I think he's like close to
I was-
80 or something like that.
Yeah, it must be. I mean, he was at the age on a lot of those guys. Still, I was going to say Michael Hayes as well, if you remember, on the gimmick battle royal from WrestleMania X7,
Oh,
the
dear
greatest
Lord.
WrestleMania.
Oh, dear
They brought
Lord.
all the gimmicks out, and one of them was Michael Hayes, and I think he must have. I don't know if he just didn't have any, tights, anything like that. I guess, but he just come out. I remember in a black shirt and like black, I guess, athletic pants, but he had his Confederate flag like sparkly robe coming out doing the little dance with the hands.
Dear Lord.
Probably right after he probably passed up Iron Sheik on his way down to the entrance ramp. Do you remember watching that by any chance?
Yeah, didn't Sheiky Baby win it?
He did, and I think the reason given was that he's probably the only one of the guys that couldn't take an over the rope bump.
So, like I
the guy that's going to win is the guy that can't take a bump. And the rumor there was that he lost, like broke his belt before the match and was out there trying to keep his pants up half the time. God love you, Sheiky Baby.
I mean, rest in heaven, my friend, because there's very few that would mess with him. And I don't know if I ever told you about this, but my brother wrestled with him on the Ohio Independence once, and those batons that he would swirl or swirl. Yeah. My brother tried to do it,
ridiculously heavy,
and he's like, no, that guy is hardcore. That guy's hardcore.
Oh, dude! I mean, you go back and look at the Sheik, like in his prime. I mean, he was in incredible shape.
Oh,
he was a world-class wrestler. Representing Iran and everything. He was a
second only top tier, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was serious. I mean, that was a shorter run, but something that worked, and obviously, just character and just Sheiky Baby himself, like just having another life, years after the fact. But he was incredible for a brief period there.
I'll tell you a funny story. My friend Tony, back in the 90s when the Attitude Era was hot and everything, and I'll preface this, I did not like the Jerry Springer show. I don't hear that well. So every time someone's talking, you hear a beep. I'm like, okay, this is stupid. Like, I can't deal with that. All right. And plus, it was garbage TV. Right. And so I went over to my friend Tony's house, and he was like, yeah, watch Springer today. And this lady, she brought out her boyfriend, and he was just mad, and it was all about wrestling. I was like, who was it? He's like, oh, it's the Iron Sheik, and all he would talk about is how much he hated Hogan, and everything was like a beep. And I was like,
that's another great thing about the Sheik is he was right about Hogan all along. We should have listened to you, Sheiky Baby.
I know. And some of the, I haven't met as many professional wrestlers as our producer Jimmy has, but I've met quite a few, and we've talked, and they always say, yeah, you don't mess with Sheiky Baby. You don't talk bad about Sheiky Baby. And when he says he'll make you humble, he'll make you humble.
Make you humble.
He was a bad dude, man. He was a bad dude.
So anyway, the way the Freebirds ended up was Terry Gordy ended up dying, unfortunately, passing away after his stint as the Executioner.
He was 40. I looked it up a few minutes ago. He was only 40. Yeah.
Gosh, I'd be dead by now. And Buddy Jack, of course, died young. And then, Brad Armstrong, unfortunately, passed young, too. Mm-hmm. And Brad Armstrong, like I said, was incredibly talented. So you look at who's left. Jimmy Jam was inducted. He was inducted to the Hall of Fame with Michael Hayes when they sung Bad Street USA again and walked through the crowd. And it was great and everything. But I am kind of, I don't want to know your feeling about this. Why didn't they put in Iceman King Parsons?
I can't speak as to how long that went on, and was that in World Class or Crockett? In either case, it's probably not that surprising that somebody that wasn't as known in WWE world wouldn't also be a part of that. And maybe, if you want to get technical about it, I mean, maybe they would consider it specifically a different faction, the Blackbirds, when he was with them, and so he doesn't really add to the Freebirds, quote unquote, lineage.
It was
playing devil's advocate there.
No, I get that on the devil's advocate. Obviously, you weren't a Freebird, you were a Blackbird, but it was fun to watch. It was fun to watch, like rewatch, and you have to dig on YouTube and Daily Motion and stuff like that to find it because a lot of that stuff has been taken off because it's considered,
I mean, you got to
tensions.
remember, it is the WWE Hall of Fame. I love Drew Carey, but Drew Carey is in the WWE Hall of Fame. No,
Pete
no,
Rose.
no shade, but the Bellas are the Bella twins. Okay.
Nah. So my feeling is, if I could rewind time, I would put the Freebirds against Demolition. I would say it'd have to be like
You're speaking my
87,
language.
87, 87, 88, 3-on-3, and I would just watch it. I would just, because I think that the story to be told, you have, Axe, who's winding down his career. You have, Smash, who was Barry Darso, who was just amazing. And he came up with all those Minnesota boys. And then you have Crush, who's big and young. The way you could match up, the way you could tell that story would be probably, and especially if they did what they did against the Road Warriors, where they came out with the Confederate on it because it was supposedly a New York-based territory. Demolition versus the Freebirds. That's probably one of the most ultimate matches we've never gotten in our lives.
I would love to see that. Again, Demolition, one of my boy tag teams. So I think I'd be on their side here. I'd be cheering for the Demolition to go over.
I probably, because I watched Freebirds first, I have to go with them. But you think like,
well, who's working heel on that one? Is it going to be the Freebirds or the
Freebirds? Because
they're going to work heel.
If Vince McMahon's bringing him in and he's going against a face-painted tag team, he's going to rip off what they did with the Road Warriors when they left the AWA. So he's going to put them in stars and bars, and you're going to be in the North. So everybody's going to be just no.
That's good thinking. Good thinking.
Yeah, and so, Michael Hayes works with Bill Eadie, or Axe, okay? And then Smash is going to work with Buddy Jack, and then Crush is going to work with Terry. And it's a perfect matchup. It's a perfect married matchup for wrestling.
Book it. Book it right now.
I will.
Unfortunately, that's
Well, anyway,
can't do that. We can do it in fantasy space. So that would have been something to add to the Crockett Cup a little bit last week too. Yes, I'd have to go back and look. I think I had the Freebird. I know I had Demolition in there because I wanted that Demolition versus Road Warriors matchup. I can't remember now if I had the Freebirds in. I don't think I did.
Well, like I said, we tried to do different styles so I could do like scientific and everything like that.
WrestleMagic.
So how can people reach you?
They can't. Don't try.
I love it when you say that. And I'm at 144 Captain on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. And of course, we have the great Jimmy Street recording for us and doing our production. And once again, I want to thank Jimmy Jam Street. And I like I said, once again, I want to thank my nephew for picking up the ball and just running with it when we didn't have time, and creating content and doing things like that because I didn't have time. And
WrestleMagic. There you go.
Yeah, he was WrestleMagic, and he's still WrestleMagic, and we're WrestleMagic. And we're going to have a great night. We want you to have a great night. Also, signing off, Sean, a song or a movie? Anything.
I'm going to go TV show instead of a movie. Break the rules a little bit. We just watched The Watcher, which was a one-run series on Netflix. It's got Bobby Cannavale in it. It's completely out there, and I love it. And they, I guess it's a slight spoiler, but they really don't tell you the end. It's a very vague ending. But that's on Netflix, and it was a pretty fun watch. I think it's from a couple of years ago, The Watcher. And
I know you don't.
Oh, God. Oh, you want a song or just
no song? Show? Go ahead. Anything you want. Anything you want, bud.
Oh, good Lord. Just go check out a band on Spotify called Goat Girl, like the animal, GOAT space girl, GIRL. They're very fun. I like them.
You've got me scared, but okay.
Don't be scared. Try new things.
I mean, I do all the time. I love squid. So, Jimmy, would you like to sign off with a show or a song or a movie?
I'm going to pick one song, and I think it'll fit the topic of the show perfectly. If you've ever gone on YouTube or any kind of music channel, look up Michael P.S. Hayes singing Freebird Road. I think
Oh,
Freebird.
God,
I'm putting that into my YouTube right now.
dude, that's awesome. So what I'm going to sign off on is
Oh God.
no, I'm not going to do anything like
no, I'm not. No, I'm just. I was expecting more. I wasn't expecting it to be so contemporary. I'll be honest.
that's
Looking at the thumbnail.
Yeah,
I'm like, this is going to be good. Some old Michael Hayes with the big shades, the wraparounds, and some big over-the-ear headphones, like in a studio somewhere, singing a song. I was like, no, he recorded this with probably his girlfriend's phone at a cemetery. So
this just
All
makes me happy to hear this. So for me, I'm going to tell everybody to the song, and this is god awful, and I apologize. I'm a Freebird. I do what I do. I'm a Freebird. What's your excuse? Which was their second song that Michael Hayes recorded. Rhyme. Oh, it was just dear Lord god awful. But so I'm gonna go with a Rob Zombie film, and I'm gonna go with Three from Hell, and
a good one.
Just because do you know how it ends?
I do, but are you gonna say? I guess it's a however-year-old movie, so you can go on and spoil it.
Wait. Three from Hell might not. Hold on. I got to make sure that I'm doing the right.
Not taking the From Hell, are
no,
you?
No.
Definitely not Rob Zombie.
It's. Hold on. I'm saying the I'm saying the sequel, which actually.
Oh, are you talking about the Devil's Rejects then?
Yes.
One from about 20 years ago?
It was the Devil's Rejects, okay? And yes, I'm saying that movie. The sequel was Three from Hell.
Yeah. And then the Devil's Rejects was a sequel of House of a Thousand Corpses.
True. But the reason I say Devil's Rejects is because what's the last song in the movie as they're going to the shootout?
Oh, no. I have no idea. It's been so long since I saw that movie.
I beat you in some kind of trivia, Sean? Holy biscuits.
Yes, but I have no idea.
Freebird.
Was it Freebird? Well, I should have known. I should have used context clues to get that one, man.
Yeah. And if you're ever out at trivia, by the way, folks, every time, or not trivia, but excuse me, karaoke. If you're ever out at karaoke and someone gets up there and they start to play, just scream, Freebird.
That's very original, Mike. Very original.
Well, that's what everybody does, but it's one of those things. I don't know if Jimmy's acknowledged that or seen that in his life, but I'm sure he did. And I know, Sean, you have. But this has been a great episode.
Having played in front of people many, many, many times, in rock bands and whatnot, I can't tell you the amount of times I've heard somebody say, "Play Freebird." I think people just assume that every band knows Freebird, which I get it, but it's not exactly the case. It's not in every band's repertoire.
I know. It's probably like a jerk thing, but it always makes me laugh, and I always think it's funny that it's the end of like a Rob Zombie film, Mr. Metal Industrial, and then it's like at the end they have a shootout with Freebird.
You know Rob Zombie loves him some Skinner.
Of course he does.
No doubt about that. I love the meme, by the way, of Rob Zombie looking like the ghost of Macho Man Randy Savage.
God.
Because they do just have similar style. Right? Rob Zombie owes quite a bit to Randy Savage of the 90s, the big cowboy hat and the spangly things, the streamers on the sleeves and everything, the fringes.
It makes sense. It makes a lot of sense, to be honest.
Whoever noticed that has got a great eye, because I remember seeing that for the first time, and that's one of the few memes that actually really gave me a good, belly laugh for a few minutes. That's a great observation, sir.
All right. Well, everybody, have a great night. WrestleMagic out.
WrestleMagic.
This has been a James Rock Street production.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.